Good morning students. In today's video we will study about the key features of Indian Constitution. Uh, by the beginning of the 12th century, the Indian national movement had been active in the struggle for independence from British rule for several decades. During the freedom struggle, the nationalists had devoted a great deal of time to imagining and planning what a free India would be like. Because under the British rule, people had been forced to obey rules that they had very little role in making. The long experience of authoritarian rule under the colonial state convinced Indians that the free India should be a democracy in which everyone should be treated equally and be allowed to participate in the government. This was done by not one person but by a group of around 300 people who became members of the Constituent Assembly in 1946 and who met periodically for the next 3 years to write the Constitution. I would like you to underline a few things in this paragraph. First of all, why we had wanted for a constitution in which everybody had an equal role. So it is the long experience of authoritarian rule under the colonial state convinced Indians that free India should be a democracy in which everyone should be treated equally and be allowed to participate in government. And then this was done by not one person but by a group of 300 till 1946 who met periodically for the next 3 years to write the India's constitution. The members of the Constituent Assembly had a huge task before them. The country was made up of several different communities who spoke different languages, belonged to different religions and had distinct cultures. So just to see that the rights of all these varieties of communities that existed in India who spoke different types of languages, followed different religions and had very different sort of cultures. So all their rights to be protected and everybody should get equal representation. So that was a huge task for the Constituent Assembly and its members to look into the matter so that their interests would be safeguarded. They all looked into this matter and then came up with the Constitution of India. So all of these issues played on the minds of the members of the Constituent Assembly as they drafted the Constitution. They rose to the occasion and gave this country a visionary document that reflects a respect for maintaining diversity while preserving national unity. I want you to underline these lines here. They rose to the occasion. The final document also reflects their concern for eradicating poverty through socio-economic reforms, as well as emphasizing the crucial role that the people can play in choosing their representatives. So a lot of things had to be kept in mind while drafting the Constitution. Now we'll deal with the key features of the Indian Constitution. Federalism. Federalism. This refers to the existence of more than one level of government in the country. So it refers to the 3 levels of the government: the central, the state and the state level and the Panchayati Raj. So please underline these here. And we had studied in class 7 about the functioning of the state government. This was done because the vast number of communities in India meant that a system of government needed to be devised that did not involve only persons sitting in the capital of New Delhi and making laws. Please underline that. So to administer a vast country like India, different levels of government was needed, one at the center, the others at the states, and then again at the village level, that is the Panchayati Raj. I hope you have underlined till there. So the state governments looked after all the matters related to the state. While each state enjoys autonomy in exercising powers on certain issues, subjects of national concern require that all these states follow the laws of the central government. Please underline that also, because the state governments have autonomy. Autonomy means having the freedom to govern itself or control its own affairs, but all those matters or all those subjects which are of national concern, at that level only the rules of the central government are to be followed by all the states and union territories. Then another one we have the constitution contains lists that detail the issues that each tier of the government can make laws on, and also where each tier of government can get the money from to do the work. So all these things have been dealt very clearly and separately in the Constitution of India, so that the state government or the central government do not encroach upon each other's freedom. Under federalism, the states are not merely agents of the federal government but draw their authority from the constitution as well. The second one is the parliamentary form of government. The Constitution of India guarantees universal adult franchise for all its citizens. Universal adult suffrage or franchise, as you know, that all the citizens who are 18 or above have the right to vote in the elections and elect their own representatives, and these representatives in turn are accountable to the people, and the citizens of the country can contest in election irrespective of his or her background. So I want you all to underline these lines. Also, every citizen of the country, irrespective of his or her social background, can contest in the election. So they do have masses from, please underline from there, universal adult suffrage. They opted for universal adult suffrage to encourage a democratic mindset and break the clutches of the traditional caste, class, gender hierarchies. I want you to underline from encourage till elections. Then the third point is separation of powers. According to the Constitution, there are three organs of the government. These are the legislature, which refers to our elected representatives, who are the MPs, and then we have the executive, who are responsible for implementing the laws and running the government. These include our administrative officers like the IAS, IPS and all. And then the judiciary, which refers to the system of courts, which again have different levels, about which we will study later in the next coming chapters. So I want you to underline from here three organs of the government. According to the Constitution, there are three organs of the government. These are the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. Again, the legislature refers to our elected representatives. Executive is a smaller group of people who are responsible for implementing laws and running the government. And the judiciary refers to the system of courts in the country. In order to prevent the misuse of power by one by any one of the branch of the government, the constitution says that each of these organs should exercise different powers. Each of these organs should exercise different powers, and each organ acts as a check on the other organ of the government. This ensures the balance of power between all three organs of the government. Then we have a box here. The word state is often used in this chapter. This does not refer to the state governments. Rather, we use state. We are trying to distinguish it from the government. Government is responsible for administering and enforcing laws. The government can change with elections. The state, on the other hand, refers to a political institution that represents a sovereign people who occupy a definite territory. We can thus speak of Indian state, the Nepali state, etc. The Indian state has a democratic form of government. The government is one part of the state. The state refers to more than just the government and cannot be used interchangeably with it. This means that when we refer to a country as a state, like the Indian state, then we refer to it as a sovereign entity, meaning no other power has control over it. Then we have the fundamental rights. The set of fundamental rights has often been referred to as the conscience of the Indian Constitution, because it guarantees rights to all the citizens of India, certain rights like the right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. All these rights are guaranteed to all the citizens irrespective of caste, sex, religion. So let us deal with the fundamental rights. But before we go into detail as to what these fundamental rights are, I would like you to understand that the Constitution guarantees these fundamental rights to the people of India against the state as well as against other individuals. This means that the state or any other individual cannot take away these rights from any of the citizen of the country. I want you to underline what fundamental rights are. It is a set of written rights It is a set of written rights that would guard against the misuse of state power in independent India. Fundamental rights therefore protect citizens against the arbitrary and absolute exercise of power by the state. The Constitution thus guarantees the right of individuals against the state as well as against other individuals. It also guarantees the right of minorities against the majority. In the second paragraph, you can underline from there, the various minority communities also express the need for the Constitution to include rights that would protect their groups. The Constitution therefore also guarantees the right of minorities against the majority. So let us come to the first one, the right to equality. Right to equality says that all people are equal before law. This means that all persons should be equally protected by the law of the country. It also states that no citizen can be discriminated against on the basis of their religion, caste or sex. Every person has the access to all public places including playground, hotels, shops, etc. The state cannot discriminate against anyone in matters of employment, but there are certain exceptions to this that we will read later on in this book. And the practice of untouchability has also been abolished. So all citizens, irrespective of caste, religion or sex, is equal before law. So suppose if a rich person commits some crime, he also gets the same punishment as anybody who is poor and has committed the same crime. Earlier, during the British period or during the rule of the Maharajas and Rajas in India, people who had money got less punishment for the same crime, and people who did not have money was severely punished for the same crime. So to do away with this sort of practice, right to equality was guaranteed to every citizen of India in the Constitution. Right to freedom. This includes the right to freedom of speech and expression, the right to form associations, the right to move freely and reside in any part of the country, and the right to practice any profession, occupation or business. Then we have the third one, right against exploitation. Exploitation means to take advantage of someone. The Constitution prohibits human trafficking, forced labor and employment of children under 14 years of age. Forced labor means earlier we had in India that was known as bonded labor, where people were forced to work under zamindars or their masters. And then we have human trafficking. Human trafficking means buying and selling of people for working against their wish. Then right to freedom of religion. Religious freedom is provided to all citizens. Every person has the right to practice, profess and propagate the religion of their choice. Meaning all the citizens of India can practice any religion they wish to, and propagate means to spread or promote an idea. So they can follow any religion they wish to. Suppose a person being born in a Hindu family wishes to change himself to Christianity, he can very well do. Then cultural and educational rights. The Constitution states that all minorities, religious or linguistic, can set up their own educational institutions in order to preserve and develop their own culture. This means that all the people who are less in number and follow certain religion or have different type of culture from the majority of the population, they have the freedom to set up their own schools to preserve their culture, so that they can teach their culture, language to their children. Like for Parsis and Jews or maybe the Buddhist, they have all their freedom to set up educational institutions in order to preserve and develop their own culture. And the last one, we have right to constitutional remedies. This allows citizens to move the court if they believe that any of their fundamental rights have been violated by the state. So if a person feels that their fundamental rights are being taken away by the state, here we refer to state as the country, or any of the other individuals, they can very well go to the court I want you all to write these fundamental rights in your copy. All of it very clearly and neatly. Write down in your copy all these 6 fundamental rights. And then coming back to the chapter again, Dr. Ambedkar has said about these fundamental rights that their object is twofold. The first objective is that every citizen must be in a position to claim those rights. And secondly, these rights must be binding upon every authority that has got the power to make laws. So, nobody in the country can deny an individual his fundamental rights, be it any organ of the government, legislature, executive, or judiciary. In addition to the fundamental rights, the Constitution also has a section called the Directive Principles of State Policy. This section was designed by the members of the Constituent Assembly to ensure that greater social and economic reforms and to serve as a guide to the independent Indian state to institute laws and policies that help reduce poverty of the masses. This was done because when India became independent after partition, majority of the population who moved from Pakistan to India or from India to Pakistan, especially the Indians, those who came from Pakistan, they left all their belongings there, did not have any money, no ways to live as they lived earlier, so they were very poor. To reduce the poverty of the masses, the Directive Principles of State Policy was incorporated in the Constitution of India. So the government had to make sure that the citizens who lived below the poverty line had to be given certain advantages so that they can also come up and be equal to the general masses. And the last one is secularism. A secular state is one in which the state does not officially promote any one religion as the state religion, meaning the country which respects all religion and treats all the religions as equal. It does not support or promote any one religion. So secularism, this topic we'll read in the next chapter. Coming to page 14, there are a few questions given here. Which fundamental rights will the following situations violate? I want you to find the answers to this, and we'll discuss the answers in the next video. So please find the answers to the questions given in the book, read the chapter, and then find the answers, and we will be discussing it in the next video. Thank you.